Welcome back to Salam Media. You're still tuned in to us. Thank you so much for giving us your time from wherever you might be listening to us from. And still sticking with the theme of the GNU. This is a topic that's on the lips of a lot of South Africans. And one thing that came out this past weekend is in a rather surprising turn of events. Al Jama-Ah recently made the decision to leave the Progressive Caucus and join the Government of National Unity. This shift has raised numerous questions about the party's motivations and future direction. Today, we have the opportunity to speak with Ganief Hendricks, the leader of Al Jama-Ah, to gain insight into this unexpected move. Ganief, known for his candid views and his strong principles, will shed light on the reasons behind this decision and what it means for the party and its supporters. Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Hendricks. Jazakallah so much for joining us and giving us your time.
Alaikum salam. It's a great pleasure to be on your show.
Mm. First and foremost, I think the question on everyone's lips is the fact that Al Jama-Ah previously criticized the GNU, at some point even stating that it would bring back apartheid. How do you reconcile this with your recent decision to now join the GNU? What changed in such a short time for you to shift your stance so drastically?
Look, the GNU, the way we understood it, was a narrative spun by Alan Ziller, the chairman of the Federal Council of the DA. And so the way that she spinned it, we just felt that it was not appropriate for us to be part of such a structure. However, we met with a high level delegation of the African National Congress, representing both the NEC and the National Working Committee. You cannot get a more senior delegation than that. So they were in full force, and we then explained to them why we don't want to join the government of national unity. And out of that discussion, it emerged that the government of national unity, as spun by Helen Ziller, was misleading. She was misleading the nation. And because we were worried that she will also continue to mislead everyone when they in the government of national unity, Al Jama then started questioning the ANC to find out whether the government of national unity is not part of a bigger picture. And they said yes, it is just one of the components of creating what they call a social compact. So,
Mm,
as you know, we have a political assembly in the city of Joburg running for the last 18 months very successfully. So, Al Jama understands how a political assembly works. So, we concluded that the power will be moved from the National Assembly of 16 parties to a political assembly consisting of 10 political parties.
mm,
So, in a nutshell, it means that the now that everyone has signed a letter of intent, we will then sit together and structure a government of national unity, which is in fact what I call a political assembly. This political assembly, their first task will be to merge the manifesto promises of the 10 parties and then to reach a national consensus on it. And this is what I like about it, the fact that there will be civilian oversight, that the national dialogue will not only consist of the 10 political parties, but it will consist of trade unions, it will consist of big business, of NGOs, everyone in civil society. And then there will be an endorsement that this is the manifesto promises that will be implemented over the 5 years. And then the
mm,
necessary budgets will be drawn up, the line items will be established, and the manifesto promises of the 10 political parties will see the light of day. So that's
mm,
the first. The next step is a policy conference. So I would imagine that there will be a policy conference will deal with foreign policy, with our position on Israel, our position on the ICJ, the position on Ukraine, and also Western Sahara. So we like the idea that there will be this opportunity and also a fiscal policy where Al Jamaa wants to make sure that South Africa gets full employment going forward because that is our manifesto promise. That is not the end of it because after that there will be what they call a social compact. And the social compact will be to try and make sure that the cost of living doesn't increase and that there's a social net that will provide 3 meals of day for meals a day for every South African. Uh, Covering all of this is a alternative dispute resolution
Mm-hmm.
instead of winner takes all. Now, in the National Assembly, the party with the most votes, they win the day. In this whole political assembly, with all its components that I've outlined, which Al Jamaa has joined, so we haven't joined a government of national unity. We've joined a political assembly which includes a government of what they call national unity. So Aldemar felt it's better for us to be around the table to influence the manifesto, the manifesto promises to be achieved. There is going to be an overriding silver bullet. And the silver bullet of all of this is that there will be an alternative dispute resolution. So
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to making decisions in the political assembly, it will be sufficient consensus, and if that is not reached, then there will be a panel that you present your case to, and they will arbitrate and make a final decision, and that will be the way forward for the political assembly, for the national assembly, because the political assembly will have numbers in the National Assembly to win whatever vote they want to win. At the moment, it's 70%, so we can even change the constitution of the country because of this particular process. So,
Mm-hmm.
Aldemar found that very exciting. We decided we're not going to leave the Progressive Caucus because the Progressive Caucus is there for us to work with like-minded parties to guide
But
us
then,
to govern.
but then, Mr. Hendricks, let me jump in there. The founding principle of the Progressive Caucus was seemingly, a collective effort to question the GNU and its principles. And now you saying, well, you're not necessarily leaving it, but then you also be making part of this quote unquote GNU. How's that going to work?
Progressive Caucus is. What happened was the EFF came to visit Al Jamaa and other parties and said that we need to discuss uh, joint approaches on certain issues going forward. And our CEO, Professor Harun, told him, why don't we meet as a group instead of you going individually to different parties? The EFF agreed, we met, and the first thing we discussed was our approach to the appointment of the office bearers for Parliament. And it was agreed that we will throw our weight behind the ANC to make sure that an ANC president
Well, we seem to have lost Mr. Hendricks for a bit there. We'll try and work with the technical team to try and get him back on board. But yeah, I think that's the news. That's the big news that has come out in this past weekend. The fact that the ANC announced that they've welcomed the 10 founding political parties to the government of national unity. And as things stands, the current political parties that will be making up the quote unquote GNU are the ANC, the Patriotic Alliance, the Democratic Alliance, the IFP, Good, PAC, the Freedom Front Plus, UDM, Rise Mzansi, and Al Jamaa. There's probably more parties that might join this collective, but so far this is where we stand. But as I'm speaking to Ganief Hendricks there, and I'm sure we'll try and get him back on air, is the fact that they were one of the parties that are very, very, strong when it comes to the criticism of the government of national unity. They previously criticized it, and Ganief himself, saying this is, one of the first steps where apartheid will ultimately be brought back. So I hope we get him back on so that we can touch on some of those issues, one of them being obviously voter trust. What will their constituency, if you personally are someone that has voted for Al Jama, how do you feel about them joining this GNU pact? Are you happy about it? Do you feel like it's something they should have done sooner? Or you feel like the Progressive Caucus, which was led by the EFF, was a better option for them to join? And also, policy consistency. How is it going to work? You have parties like the Democratic Alliance, who are very unequivocal when it comes to your sentiments, and their pro-Palestine sentiments. And then you have Al Jama and the ANC and many other parties that have made the ferry. And I think we have Mr. Ganief Hendricks, who's back on the line. Mr. Hendricks, thank you so much for coming back. I think, before we lost you for a moment there. We were just chatting about the Progressive Caucus, and one of its mandates being the questioning of the GNU. Well, you're saying you're not necessarily leaving the Progressive Caucus. You'll still be a part of that, but again, you're one of the 10 political parties that will be making up the GNU. You're still explaining to us how that is going to be working out. Um, Mr. Hendricks, we can't seem to hear you. We've lost you there for a moment. All right. We seem to have lost Ganief Hendricks. I think we'll go for a quick ad break and then we'll try and re-establish communication with him because there's so much that we still need to unpack with Ganief Hendricks. I mean, they seem to be polar opposites with some of the political parties that are part of the GNU. You have the likes of the Freedom Front Plus who are making part of the GNU, and also how are internal party dynamics going to work, and if there was any internal dissent within the Al Jama regarding the decision to join their GNU, and how did they address any potential disagreements or concerns from party members? But then again, I want to chat to you as a voter. You probably gave Al Jama your vote. Well, they have 2 seats in Parliament right now, and they'll be throwing those 2 seats behind the weight of the Government of National Unity. As someone that voted for Al Jama, how do you feel about the move to join the Government of National Unity? Is it one that you appreciate? Is it one that you're concerned about? How do you feel? Are you happy that your party will ultimately also have a say, in the policy drafting of the country, and be in government, from having 2 seats to now making up government? And if there are any, ministerial, positions that you're looking at, President Cyril Ramaphosa is set to announce his cabinet either tomorrow, today, but sometime during the week. Are there any cabinet ministerial positions that you're looking at that you feel like, a representative from Al Jama might potentially, garner one of them and, make that department successful? I think you can just comment on whatever platform that you are engaging with us on, and we're still trying to establish that communication with Mr. Ganief Hendricks. So much to unpack, for him to just explain how this GNU is going to work. I think there's been so much that has been said about how this new dispensation is going to look like. And I think having someone who's going to be making part and parcel of that dispensation, unpacking it for us in real time on how exactly it's going to look is going to be really, really interesting, because it seems that already you have drifts between the political parties themselves. The Democratic Alliance, the reports that they want the equal amount of ministerial positions as the ANC itself, and the ANC seemingly not really happy with that move from the DA. And also, we saw the emergence of the video of Mr. Ronaldo House. Do you think will that in any way kind of put this government of national unity in imbalance? We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll try and reestablish that communication with Ganief Hendricks. Welcome back. You're still tuned in to Salam Meet with myself, Salailo Makwideri. And before we went to the break, we were chatting to leader of Al Jama-Ah, Mr. Ganief Hendricks, just making sense of their decision to join the government of national unity. Mr. Hendricks is joining us via StreamYard. I hope we have him back on air. Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Ganief Hendricks. Can you hear me?
Alaikum salam. I hope I'm audible now.
Yes, yes, you are audible. And as I mentioned before we went to the break, we were just chatting briefly about the Progressive Caucus and the GNU. You said before, we lost you for a moment there that Al Jama won't necessarily be leaving the Progressive Caucus led by the EFF, which one of his founding principles is the questioning of the GNU and its fundamental principles. And now, Al Jama coming out and joining the GNU. Just explain to us how is that going to work?
Yeah, look, like I explained to you earlier on, the Progressive Caucus is a meeting of the minds, and everyone then, we try and persuade one another on a certain position. One of the first things we tackled was are we going to support the ANC in the appointment of a president and a speaker? And the decision was yes. And President Malema was at the meeting, said that he is even prepared to propose President Ramaphosa as the president, which we found very encouraging. However, the next day he proposed himself. So the Progressive Caucus is just a think tank that meets regularly. We meet, as in person or on the telephone. Just yesterday, I had conversations with the EFF, the Savambu, and also the Secretary General with Bantu Alamisa, with the UDM. So we in touch all the time, and that is still continuing, and we believe that the MK will also join the Progressive Caucus going forward. So Al
Mm-hmm.
Jama will be one of the parties and the PAC and UDM that will be inside the political assembly, which includes a government of national unity, and the other parties will be outside. But we believe that they are still considering joining the political assembly, and we we asked them for their advice on whether Al Damar should join the political assembly, which includes a government of national unity. And they said at the moment they are still monitoring the situation. They don't have a fixed position. And so I told her, now what must Al Damar now do? They said,
mm,
look, you guys have to do your own thing, decide what is best for you. So we met with the joint committee of the NEC and NWC of the ANC, and they explained to us that government of national unity is part of a bigger picture, that the way Helen Jella portrays it, everything she says is wrong. They agree with everything she says, and they've told her that in no uncertain terms. And so on that basis, we told them, now tell us what is the bigger picture. And they then explained to us, which I did earlier on to your listeners, they explained to us the idea of merging manifesto promises, having a budget for it, and then line items to implement it. They spoke about the involvement of civil society with regard to the final decisions of what they call a national dialogue. And then we move on to policy conferences on foreign policy, on fiscal policy. And Al Jamaa wants to be around the table when the issue of Palestine is debated, when the issue
mm,
of Ukraine is debated. And we want to vigorously support the ANC with regard to the ICG and the World Court cases. And
mm,
so then what we also like is the fact that after that, after the policy conferences, we are not going to agree on, in fact, we're not going to agree on anything with the DA as part of this collective. We're not going to agree on anything, and that's why if everything will land up in a dispute resolution process, which will be arbitration, and we will accept the outcome of the arbitration moving forward. And on issues that is really very sensitive, it will just be set aside, and we'll move on other things that will benefit the nation. But what I like about all of this is, in the end, there will be a social compact. When I was in the trade union movement, I used to study and lecture on the social compact, where there's no wage increases, for example, for 3 years, but there's no rise in inflation and there's no rise in the cost of living. So that's what I understand by a social compact. I don't know how
mm,
it's going to work in the political sphere. I'm very keen to learn and be part of it. So Al Jamaa runs a political assembly in the city of Joburg for 18 months, and it has worked well. And we've reached consensus on most of the issues with regard to the IDP. And the only thing missing in the city of Joburg is they don't have a conflict resolution procedure, which we now have planned for the political assembly, of which the government of national unity is part of, and not the and doesn't embody everything. So your listeners must have get the ANC to explain the full picture, so they don't have half the story. And certainly, whatever Helen Zille says, they must treat with a pinch of salt. It is political posturing. It is it is like trying to be relevant. Because remember, they're only going to be 20%
mm,
of the support, and the majority will be what I also call progressive parties. So we have progressive parties in the outside the GNU and inside the GNU.
mm. Mr. Hendricks, I think right now, as Al Jama also makes up part of those 10 political parties who are part of the GNU. You could maybe give us insight on some of the issues, because it seems that the DA and the ANC have now hit a brick wall when it comes to the cabinet posts that are offered. We understand that the president was expected to unveil his cabinet on Sunday, following his inauguration at the Union Buildings in Pretoria last week. But the DA's demands has pushed this back several days. There are reports that the Democratic Alliance wants at least 10 appointments to be its MPs in key economic portfolios in cabinet, and that is seemingly reaching breakdown when it comes to negotiations with the ANC and the DA. Just how much information do you have within that, and what's Al Jama's contribution in the greater discourse when it comes to the appointment of cabinet?
Look, we don't have much inside information. All we can rely on is a document that I signed with the ANC. I didn't sign any documents with the DA or any other political party. I only signed a
But then
document.
you will be working with the DA. They're your partners now.
Yeah,
Never
yeah. No,
mind
they
how
are
many
not our
seats
partners.
each one might have.
The DA
Yep.
is not our partners. They are our opposition in in the political assembly or the government of national unity, as you call it. We will vigorously oppose, for example, their position on Palestine, and we will then obviously reach deadlock. It will then go to an arbitration panel that will determine the way forward. And the document, if you read it, does give some weight to the numbers that people have. So when the arbitrator looks at at making a determination, they will see, oh, the ANC supports this, or Jama-Ah supports it. The DA with only 20% supports it. So the 20% against the 80%, the 80% will trump them. So we hope that will govern the arbitrator's decision. So we are going to be not partners of the DA. We're
Mm,
going there in like a bull in a china shop. So if the ANC thinks that we're going to be palace with the DA, they can never get about it. We're going in there to fight them at the table in the front lines. We're not going to sit outside and just have 3 minutes in Parliament, to moan and groan about what's happening. We're going inside. We're going to fight them. We will, in the effort to reach official consensus, we'll try. We'll put a very strong case. We'll get the best thought leaders to assist us. And when it comes to presenting our case before the panel for a final decision, we will vigorously put our case, and we're sure we're going to be supported by progressive parties which are already with us, like the PAC and the UDM and others, and also even those who are not part of the Progressive Caucus, who are members of the 10 party team. We're sure we're going to get their support as well, because it's all about humanitarian issues. And we believe that members of parliament, except the DA members, they have a humanitarian approach to life.
mm. Let's touch a bit on policy consistency. How will Al Jama ensure that its core principles and policies are not compromised by joining a coalition of parties it previously criticized? And you've mentioned DA a few times, and you're rather pessimistic in how you'll be approaching, your working relationship with them.
No, look, it's quite easy, like we do in Parliament, and the arbitrator makes a decision or there is sufficient consensus on a particular matter. We will say, please note the objection of Al Jama, and the country will know that we're now bound by it, but we don't support it.
Mm, mm. And on voter trust, I think sometimes political leaders tend to take these very, very drastic decisions, like joining the GNU, without thinking really what your constituency might think of the decision itself. Your supporters, going forward, do you feel like they can trust your leadership and your decision making? When it comes to your party stance, when you can so dramatically in such a short period of time change your stance on a political or on a particular issue like you've done with the GNU.
Yeah, look, you must remember we don't stand with the GNU. The GNU is part of a bigger picture. So we are going to having around political roundtables in all our 9 provinces to explain the bigger picture, that the GNU is part of a bigger picture. I spoke about the national dialogue with the civilian oversight. I spoke about the alternative dispute resolution, about the policy conferences, and our members will give input with regard to that. So at the moment, we're not bounding us. We haven't agreed on anything in the government of national unity, except that we'll sit around the table and fight one another to the bone with regard to issues in the interests of our members and voters. So we will do the same. Our members, especially we work in 100 villages, they are very happy that we have bilateral relations with the ANC and the ministers especially agriculture, who is now the speaker, and they want us to bring resources to the villages, and they feel that the best way is to have the ear of government. We will now have the ear of 10 political parties as well. They will at least listen to us. And we hope to convince them to support bringing resources to villages, for example. And then on many other issues, we want full employment in South Africa and decent work because South Africa signed the Convention on Decent Work with the ILO. We want that implemented. 10 years, nothing has been done with regard to decent work and full employment. We still have slave workers in South Africa. No one is free. There's no decent work in South Africa. So that is what that has captured the imagination of our voters. And we now have a broader forum to put our case and get support for the Convention on Decent Work and Full Employment, which President Mandela signed just before he left Parliament.
Mm. And how optimistic are you about the GNU, and if it will indeed, last the next 5 years without breaking down?
Look, there is this alternative dispute resolution, so the GNU will always be there. The only danger is that the ANC only has 40% of the vote. So, in order to pass any legislation in Parliament, we actually need another 10%, and we hope that the parties remaining with the ANC will make up the 10% so that we can still push through legislative reforms through Parliament, policies through Parliament, motions through Parliament, with the extra 10%, whereas in the Government of National Unity, it is 20%. It is 60% consensus, so that means the ANC needs 20%. So we will still be able to do our work in the National Assembly because there the threshold is much less. It's only another 10%. Whereas in the political assembly or the government of national unity, it will be a harder fight, and Jama-Ah is ready to fight.
All right. I think we're going to leave it there, Mr. Hendricks. Thank you so much for giving us your time. And I hope we'll be linking up with you a bit more as, the government of national unity starts taking shape. And you guys are part of the broader discourse. Jazakallah so much for giving us your time.
No, it's a pleasure. Alaikum salam.
There you have it there. That was the leader of Al Jama-Ah and also MP, Mr. Ganief Hendricks, just giving us insight on their, rather shocking move to join the Government of National Unity, which they previously really, came out strong against them alongside all of the other parties that made up the Progressive Caucus, which was led by the Economic Freedom Fighters. So I think interesting move from Al Jama-Ah. I think from now onwards, it's just to sit and watch on what role that they'll be playing in this broader context of the GNU, and also just look out for that cabinet announcement that's going to be announced by the president this week. But from the looks of things, it seems like the DA wants John C. Hazen as deputy president in the GNU because President Cyril Ramaphosa was expected to unveil his cabinet on Sunday, which was yesterday. This was following his inauguration at the Union Buildings, but it seems like the Democratic Alliance demands has pushed back this back several days, and there seems to be more talks between the African National Congress and the DA that have now seemingly hit a brick wall. So I think it's time to just watch and see and try to dissect as this Government of National Unity, as it has been coined, starts to take shape, and hopefully by the end of the week we'll have cabinet confirmed by the president. We're going to leave it here for now, but keep it locked to Salam Media as we'll be giving you the latest of post-election, analogies and ideologies that have been thrown around by the different political parties as we try to form the seventh administration. We're going to leave it here for now. Thank you so much for giving us your time. Assalamu alaikum.